First of all, thank you to the trustees and everyone for having me here to speak about the IHRA. My name is Dr. Sheryl Nestel. I'm a retired sociologist and a member of Independent Jewish Voices for the last 14 years. I'm a Canadian Jew. I'm also a citizen of Israel, where I lived for 15 years. 47 years ago, I married into a Holocaust survivor family. And every day when I come into my office and view a picture painted by my late mother-in-law of members of her town being shot by Einsatzgruppen soldiers and buried at a mass grave, I confront anti-Semitism that my family has been, my family has suffered from. I've devoted countless hours in the last 3 years to opposing the IHRA definition of anti-Semitism, working both in Canada and in international groups. I'm very anxious to see that the Waterloo District School Board today actually takes action to prevent the IHRA from being adopted. What I want to emphasize here today is that despite claims to the contrary, the IHRA WDA is not a universally accepted definition of anti-Semitism. And this is one of the many claims that are made again and again. It has been vigorously opposed by leading Jewish academics, including some of the world's most respected scholars of anti-Semitism, the Holocaust and Jewish studies, and even by the definition's lead author himself, as we've heard from a few of the presenters. So far from a consensus document, the debate over the IHRA within the Jewish community itself has been a very intense one. And this calls into question declarations made by institutional Jewish groups that Jews have a right to define their own oppression. The question is, who legitimately speaks for Jews? Jews are a diverse group with diverse political opinions, and that has to constantly be remembered. And let's be clear, the groups that are speaking up for the IHRA from within the Jewish community are not democratically chosen bodies. Their Israel right or wrong stance is not shared by at least a third of Canadian Jews, if not more, according to evidence from 2 polls that were done in 2017 and 2018. And with the election of a racist, xenophobic and homophobic government in Israel recently, Jewish disillusionment with Israeli policy will only continue to grow. So criticisms of the definition as highly flawed and dangerous to academic freedom and freedom of speech have been voiced widely in academia worldwide. As was mentioned, James Capia mentioned that the Canadian Association of University Teachers, representing 75,000 Canadian academics, unanimously rejected any implementation of the IHRA, and 40 Canadian faculty associations that have passed anti-IHRA motions, 600 Canadian academics and 150 Canadian Jewish academics who have signed petitions opposing the IHRA. And despite claims by its supporters that it's not an impediment to free speech, the IHRA has indeed been used to censure speech critical of Israel, both in Canada and around the world. And there are more than 40 examples of how the IHRA has been used to silence critics of Israel in the US, the UK, Germany, the Netherlands, and elsewhere. So I want to go over the other opponents of the IHRA. And not only academics have opposed it, but civil liberties groups have opposed it. So in Canada, the British Columbia Civil Liberties Association, the International Civil Liberties Monitoring Group, La Ligue des Droits de Liberté, all of these have taken strong positions against the IHRA definition. In the US, the list includes the American Civil Liberties Union Association, the Center for Constitutional Rights, the Foundation for Individual Rights in Education, the National Lawyers Guild, and Palestine Legal. The editorial boards of the New York Times, the Los Angeles Times, and the Washington Post have all criticized the adoption of the definition. And importantly, many major Jewish groups have issued statements rejecting the IHRA WDA, including the New Israel Fund, J Street, the Reconstructionist Judaism, Americans for Peace Now, and the rabbinical human rights group Truah. Reform Judaism, which is the major denomination in the US rejects adopting the IHRA for legal purposes. Kenneth Stern, this was mentioned as well, one of the authors of the IHRA definition, has stated that it was never intended as a tool to target or chill speech. And Stern has objected to what he has called the weaponizing of the definition, arguing that its misuse undermines efforts to detect and combat real instances of anti-Semitism. As a result, Stern has opposed attempts to enact legislation in the US that incorporates the IHRA definition, including the Anti-Semitism Awareness Act, first introduced to Congress in 2018. Moreover, according to David Feldman, director of the Institute for the Study of Anti-Semitism at Birkbeck College of the UK and one of the world's most renowned experts on anti-Semitism, the greatest flaw of the IHRA definition is its failure to make any ethical and political connections between the struggle against anti-Semitism and other sorts of prejudice. And I think for many of us, this is a really key notion that we cannot prioritize or make anti-Semitism a form of racism that is prioritized above others. A question that I have for the trustees is, do you even have a clear idea of what adoption actually will mean? Well, the definition has been adopted in many countries and as well as by many municipalities and civil institutions. In every instance, there is no consensus regarding what adoption actually means. Does the adoption of the IHRA compel an institution to discipline or fire staff or expel or suspend students who are deemed to be in violation of the definition? Does it legitimate censorship of controversial publications or texts that are deemed to violate the definition? Can student expressions of dissent be outlawed or suppressed if they appear to violate the IHRA? It is the vagueness of the boundaries between what is permissible and what is forbidden by the IHRA definition that poses the greatest risks. According to the American Association of University Professors, in a few short years, the IHRA working definition of anti-Semitism has gone from being an obscure document known to few people to a game-changing instrument of policy and an effective tool of censorship that functions in many contexts like a piece of legislation with major implications for discussions of Israeli politics. In conclusion, I sincerely hope that the trustees of the Waterloo District School Board will use the information that we've presented, both in this meeting and in other informative forums that we put on, to make a principled decision based not on obfuscating and manipulative pleas and arguments that claim that the IHRA is somehow a magic bullet to eradicate anti-Semitism, but rather on the overwhelming evidence that the IHRA is not only a cure, is not only not a cure for all anti-Jewish racism, but a tool that can negatively impact students, teachers, and all those who value free public debate and support human rights across the board. Thank you very much.